Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm going to talk specifically about a very special lesson that has already been taught to us by within Dungeons and Dragons, specifically by the Warforged race within Eberron. Okay. All right, so Dungeons and Dragons is an incredibly special game. It is absolutely a game, but in many ways, it's so much more than that, right? So one of the things I've been thinking about is this idea of what is the value of Dungeons and Dragons, right? I really feel the value of Dungeons and Dragons is in its ability to tell stories about our world. So we live in IRL, and then when we come to the table, we use Dungeons and Dragons to create a mirror of our world. And within that mirror image, things are slightly different, but they're often very much the same. And we use that to tell stories, right? And so we can use Dungeons and Dragons to explore the parapets of the politics of our own nation, to explore the caverns of our culture, right? To go into the sepulchers of our society. Right? It's just so, the value of it is so incredibly high, and it gets higher every day because we have answers that we need. There's lessons that we need to learn, right? But the cost of learning those lessons in this world, in IRL, is so incredibly high. And yet, I feel like at an incredible discount, we can get answers to questions we have in the Dungeons and Dragons world, in that mirrored world. Right, where things can be tried and done at a cost that is not the same as in IRL. So we use the game to explore our politics, our culture, our society, and even ourselves. Right, and so every story we're going in, we're trying to bring out lessons. We're trying to bring out answers to questions. Okay, now there are certainly people who believe that the height of the game is to slay a goblin with fireball or with sword, and that's all the game, and that's all the game, and that's all that the game needs to be. I count them as my brothers and sisters in Dungeons and Dragons, but I must confess a small amount of pity for them, because the game is just so much more than that, and it's such a more powerful tool than that for us as a nation, for us as a people, for us as a community, right? So we go in, and in each game, we're for people who, in my opinion, truly understand the value of the game, of what it truly is, that Dungeons and Dragons perhaps even transcends being a game, right? That we're trying to bring out these answers. We're trying to bring out these lessons, right? But what if the game has already supplied an incredibly valuable lesson or an incredibly valuable answer? And I think that's the case. I've been studying the Warforged recently, just kind of really reading into their history, understanding them across the editions, thinking about their future, thinking about their past, thinking about their present. And I think the Warforged are truly, truly unique. Keith Baker made the Warforged, in my opinion, a container that contains allegory, right? And I think it contains allegory for transhumanism, and it very much contains allegory for what is happening with artificial intelligence and what is happening with, very specifically, LARS, lethal autonomous robots. And I think at the end of the day, if you really think about Warforged, that is their best equivalent to our modern day. That the idea of LARS, lethal autonomous robots, that is what Warforged can give us answers to, can give us a lesson to. And I think there's an incredibly valuable lesson we've already learned. And so I want to talk about Warforged, and I'm going to tell you what the lesson is, okay? So let's talk about Warforged. They were created by House Cannith in the Magical Creation Forges, specifically to fight in the last wars. So humans created Warforged. They are specifically made of stone, wood, and metal. After the last war, they were given freedom at the Treaty of Thronehold. They specifically do have free will, but it's an uncertainty whether they have a soul. They can be resurrected. They have no biological sex. They choose, they can choose to adopt a gender role. They do not age. Healing, when used upon them, is diminished, although the repair spell is fully effective, right? Getting the idea that, oh, wait, are they more machine? Are they more man, woman? Hard to say, right? All right. Merrick's Decaneth was at the midpoint of the last wars when he was commissioned to create an army of tireless golem warriors, and he went about this task. He was not able to complete it himself. His son Aaron came in and invented the magical process that was actually used in the creation forges. House Cannith, after the last war, declared Warforged a people, not a possession. They also shut down the creation forges, never to be used again. Okay? That was the intent. Merrick's saw the Warforged as tools. Aaron saw them as life. Okay? And from all of this, the Warforged were spawned, and then they became their own people, and they became adventurers, they became residents, they became all these different things, not just on Eberron, but on other worlds as well, right? Traveling through portals, things which are within Dungeons and Dragons. Out of this also came the Lord of Blades, a messianic figure for some Warforged that actually seeks to control or destroy all organic life. Okay, so now we understand. Now we have an understanding, right, of the Warforged, right? So what can we learn from it? What can we learn from Warforged about Lars, about lethal autonomous robots? So one, the creation of the Warforged required political power, wealth, technological know-how, and arcane know-how. Guess what? Modern IRL creation of Lars, lethal autonomous robots, requires exactly the same thing. Okay? It requires political power. It requires wealth. It requires technical know-how. And guess what? At the deepest ends of the technical pool, there's some pretty arcane people. I'll tell you that right now. Okay? So it's exactly the same. It's a perfect analogy for the creation of Lars, right? And right now, in the United States of America, we are absolutely creating Lars. We're creating machines that will be considered whether they will become Lars or not, right? And we are absolutely, this is already begun. Right? So without a doubt, right? All right. So let's talk about this. So technologists, so here's the issue, right? Technologists are required to build Lars. Technologists are absolutely required to build lethal autonomous robots. But here's the thing. But the requirements for lethal autonomous robots, the definition of what a lethal autonomous robot should be, does not belong to technologists. Defining what Lars will be, what they will do, what role they will have in our politics, in our society, in our culture, technologists have absolutely no business near that question. That is the lesson of Eberron for Warforged, that essentially they allowed technologists to move forward and attempt to do this, right? And technologists have no business near that question, okay? The question of how to define a Lars is they should belong, that question of defining a lethal autonomous robot, how it should be constructed, what instructions it should be given, how it should be built, how it should be used, how it should be destroyed, when it should be destroyed, if it should be destroyed. All of these belong to theologists and philosophers. And that was the mistake of House Cannith, is they gave the job of definition of their lethal autonomous robots, Warforged, to technologists and arcanists. And that question should have been given to the clerics and the sages. In our society, it needs to be given to theologists and philosophers. Our clerics and our sages, right? Any machine in our world, any machine that is capable, that is possibly capable of taking a human life, must be defined, not built, right? must be defined by theologists and philosophers, not technologists. Technologists have a right to be involved in building a lethal autonomous robot. They have absolutely no business defining a lethal autonomous robot. They do not own that task. And any machine that was defined by technologists should be immediately ontologically recognized as a critical threat to humanity. It's absolutely critical, right? This is the lesson that I think Keith Baker has already delivered with the history, the definition, the use of Warforged in multiple settings within Dungeons & Dragons over the last decade. This is the lesson that's already been provided, and we need to recognize it. Thank you very much. Please consider liking and subscribing. Thank you.